know you don't think I'm lazy, but I'm going to sit here and make my remarks. And somebody said, why does he do that? It's because he's so old. That's part of it. The other is I work out in the morning at 6:30, and so I'd rather sit down than stand up. And I don't speak from notes, so I don't have anything I have to refer to other than my watch, so I don't go too long. I was at Cornell 3 or 4 years ago, and a faculty member was going to introduce me, and he was very nervous about it. I could tell. He was sitting there, and we were having lunch, and then he's going to introduce me. I'm going to speak. And so he leaned over to me, and he said, Mr. Pickens, how long will you be speaking? And I said, oh, I don't know, 5 minutes or 5 hours, whatever you want. 5 minutes or 5 hours? Yeah. And now 10 minutes passed. Now I'm getting ready to go, and he leaned over and said, I think I'd rather you'd stick closer to 5 minutes. So I'm not 5 minutes or 5 hours. I'll make 10 or 15 minutes of remarks, and then maybe you have some questions for what I'm trying to sell today. What I'm trying to sell is an energy plan for America. Now, I've been at it since July of '08, and we've made real progress. It's not hard to make progress if you have the circumstances and the resources to work with that I do. We only have one resource, so it's pretty simple. And I had a meeting with John McCain in August of '08, and he said, tell me, what you're thinking on energy. And I said, well, one is pretty simple. I said, you only have one resource in America that will compete with foreign oil. He said, is that right? I said, yes. It's natural gas. He said, you're trying to make me pick winners. I said, you don't understand. It's not a multiple choice question. I said, there's only one resource. That's all we have. That's all we can compete with. We don't have enough oil. We produce 5 million barrels of oil a day in the United States. We use 20 million barrels of oil a day, and we import 13 million barrels. Now we have some natural gas liquids in there. If you're adding that up, those are NGLs, natural gas liquids, that make that out to the 20 million barrels a day. So we become more and more dependent on oil from countries that really don't like us. I focus on that. Of course, Canada doesn't fall in that category, nor does Mexico. But when I go to those that I'm very concerned about as a security issue for America, is OPEC. We get 5 million a day from OPEC, and I can only see, when I look at the countries in there, I see countries that are selling us oil that really, they fall from we don't like you to we hate you. There's nobody in there that says we like you and we respect you and we're friends of yours. They're just not in that group. And we're stupid. If we have a resource to replace the OPEC oil, we should be using it. And then I narrow it further that use it for heavy duty trucks, because you can't move a battery with heavy duty. You can't move a heavy duty truck with a battery. It won't work. Now, Al Gore and I have become friends on this issue. May surprise you, but Al and I are friends. But anyway, when Al and I were talking about it, I said that, Al, I said, you want a battery for everything? He said, that's right. He said, it's cleaner and it'll serve purpose better for all I talk about. I said, Al, you understand, a battery won't move an 18-wheeler. It won't. That's when Al found out that the battery isn't going to help him on an 18-wheeler. So he said, well, what do we do? I said, go natural gas. I said, it's 50% cleaner than diesel. And I said, it's a resource in America. It's abundant here, and it's cheaper. And so after an hour, we talked about this subject. If you ever go to lunch with Al, and this was a day we had lunch in his suite at the Regency in New York, let him order for you. When I said I was coming over, he said, what do you want for lunch? I said, I'll have whatever you do. I opened the door at his suite to go in. Cheeseburger and fries. I won't order it, but I'll damn sure eat it. Anyway, we had a great meeting, and Al and I did there, and he said, if I can go for natural gas for heavy duty if you can go for battery for light duty. I said, I can go for anything that's American. I said, that's fine with me. Battery, I've got to have let me have your napkin. I have a few allergies every once in a while. But anyway, so we talked it out, and Al and I came to agreement on that. But the light duty, and again, I'm all American. That light duty is more expensive. We know that for a battery. Does it work? Absolutely works. You also know that ethanol won't move an 18-wheeler either. So some people say, well, we're going to use ethanol. You can use ethanol, it works. Am I against it? It's a little bit kind of weird that you pay more for it than it's worth. I mean, to produce it, but you have to subsidize the fuel and all. But it's ours, and so, you know, it's kind of like an ugly baby. It's ours, so we got to stick with it. And but here, what I want you to do, and this, I'm very close to accomplishing what I set out to do. Now, I told everybody I was going to get it done in the first 100 days. Wrong. Nothing ever happens in the first 100 days, I found out, so that was my inexperience, you know, saying something I should have kept my mouth shut on. But anyway, I got to believing I could do it before 09 was out. Legislation is all in place. It's all ready to go. We've got 126 co-sponsors for H.R. 1835, which is a heavy duty, goes to domestic fuel. And it's ready, it's written, and but we can't get it to the floor. Now, my reason for not having that happen was that we had a health care bill, and it seemed to occupy everybody full-time for a long time. And now I think we're ready to go. I don't think I'm going to be able to get it before the State of the Union, but I do believe it's going to happen before Memorial Day. We will have an energy plan for America. But what I want you to do, it's the first plan that has ever, if we have it, it'll be the first plan our country has ever had for energy. They pecked away with a little energy legislation, and it's been meaningless in the past. They've had to compromise everything, but it really was not understood, not understood. Now, I had a reporter coming over here in the car with me from the office this morning, and he said, how could this be? You have an abundant, cleaner fuel that is cheaper. It's ours. Why do we use the foreign oil? I said, real simple. It was cheap. Oil was cheap. The infrastructure was in place. It was too easy to use. And we never had leadership in Washington that fully appreciated the security issue of importing oil from the enemy. So, how did it? That'll work.
It's the Pickens plan. Doing it your army.
Okay. All right. That's pretty good. I've seen it, but I didn't expect to see it here. So, the plan that we have is it will work. It is going to happen. We are going to get our own resources and all. But we had, from Richard Nixon, is when I first became conscious of it. And in 1970, Nixon said, by the end of the decade, we will not import any oil to the United States. We'll be on our own resource, 100%, no oil. At that point, we were importing 24%. At the end of the decade, we were importing 28%. Nobody even asked him about it. Said, by the way, you know, you said no oil imported, but oil was cheap. And so who, you know, mentions it, that's fine, just take it, use it, and all. Going forward from Nixon, everybody that ran for president, Democrat or Republican, would at some point during the campaign say, elect me and we'll be energy independent, as if it had something like magic, you know, that this is all going to happen. Nobody ever held them accountable. Nobody ever said, after they were elected, 2 years into their first term, would say, you know, you said we'd be energy independent, and I don't see anything happening in that area. What plan do you have for us? Nobody ever asked them. I became so obsessed with it, you know, when will they ask, you know, and all. We trooped through it. I got an opportunity to have some influence with two candidates, one Dole in 1996, and he asked me to come on as chairman of Texas for him, and I said, okay, but I get to be the energy guy. He said, of course, you know more about energy than anybody I know. We went along for about 2 or 3 months. I said, do you want to know what I know about energy? And he said, not really. I said, well, I signed on to be able to say something. Well, he said, nobody cares about energy. And he said, let me explain something to you about politics. He said, you see that sleeping dog there? No, if you say it's there, okay, it's a sleeping dog. He said, when a politician has a sleeping dog, they never wake them up. And energy is a sleeping dog in 96. Clinton's not going to mention it, and I'm not going to mention it. Okay. And it wasn't mentioned. He said, but in case it is, I'll call you if the dog wakes up or somebody trips over it. And so I had no influence in 96. Now I get around to a guy you all probably don't remember that he was there just for a minute, was Rudy Giuliani. That was I put a lot of money in that and was unhappy about the way he bowed out, so I threw a stone at him there and saying he wasn't around very long. And anyway, Rudy, I'm the energy guy for Rudy, and that conversation took place for 5 minutes, and I said, whatever you do not get up and say, elect me and we'll be energy independent, because I said, you cannot fulfill that. And it was the next week when he did that. So I had no influence there either. And I was, of course, I was, I was disappointed and maybe hurt my feelings or whatever. And so when that happens, I usually have something to say about it. And so in Los Angeles, the day he bowed out, somebody, the TV there was on me and said, now you supported Rudy Giuliani, you put a lot of money in the race and you raised a lot of money for him and everything. How do you feel about this and all? And I said, I think my guy rode up in front of the grandstand and fell off his horse. And he didn't like that. So it sort of balanced out maybe. It was two guys talking about something that didn't make any difference to anybody but us. And so anyway, so I have had no influence up until I started the Pickens plan. But you go out and spend $62 million, you can create some influence and interest and all. But I do think this, that there's 1,600,000 people signed up with me, and I hope all of you, I know there's some that are signed up with me here today because two of them have already told me, but I would like for you to come on PickensPlan.com and sign up with me. There's 1,600,000 people there, and I can tell you that I have a hell of a lot more influence in Washington today with 1,600,000 people signed up with me than a rich guy giving money to politicians and going to Washington and thinking I'm going to influence something. I've been up there for 30 years. Somebody said, tell me what's the most important legislation you ever influenced. I thought a minute, I said, I don't think I've ever influenced anything. I have stopped some things that should be stopped, but I have never caused anything to happen on legislation in 30 years. And I am this time. But with 1,600,000 people, I gross it up for them. They have a spouse, they have a child in the home, so they get you up to about 5 million people. And these politicians, they think, my God, what could he get these people to do? I don't know either. I don't know what I can get them to do. I know one thing, I've stayed on energy totally. I've had questions asked me, what do you know about health care? Nothing. What do you know about the economy? Nothing. Bob McTeer, those guys can do that. I don't understand it. And it's, so I don't get away from what I consider myself to be an expert at. So anyway, I want you to sign up with me, if you will, today, because it will be help. I'm trying to get to 2 million people. One, to show the politicians that we are still very active, that the movement is moving and all. And one thing that we're going to do before the midterm elections here, we're going to point out those candidates that do not have an energy plan. And they will be identified as candidates as their energy plan will be foreign oil. That's it. It's either up or down. If you don't have an energy plan, you'll have foreign oil. I said, well, I'm not for foreign oil. They've already told me that. And I said, if you don't have a plan, that's what you get. That's what you'll get is foreign oil. And so you need to show that you have, you know, a real plan for America and how we solve a problem that has to be solved. Because this is not about an 81-year-old guy. This is about generations that are coming up. I can make it to the finish line, however the energy issue goes. But you take it forward, I can promise you in 10 years, if you go back 5 years, that revenues to OPEC were $250 billion. 5 years ago. Last year, they were $1,250 billion. Okay, now go forward 10 years, this is what I think you're going to have. You're going to be importing 75% of your oil, and you're going to be paying $300 a barrel for it. Now, you'll solve two problems in this country if that's the road we take. You'll solve the health care, and you'll solve education, because you won't have any money to do either one of them. Those will be done, they won't happen because you spent your money on somebody else's oil. And the whole thing is insane because you do have a resource that will fix it. If you go just the heavy duty, 7.5 million, that's all, 18-wheelers, that 7.5 million away from diesel to natural gas, you will cut OPEC in half. 2.5 million barrels a day. We take 5 from them now, you can cut them in half. I've had 3 contacts from the Saudis on what I started in July of 2008. Within 2 weeks, I heard from them. That was the Democrat convention, and I've heard from them 2 times since then. The first one was, what are you doing? Going to get off of your oil is what I'm going to do if I can do it. You can't do that, is what they say. We're interdependent on each other. No, we're not. You think we are, and that's the way we've acted for the last 40 years, but that's not the case. And so I've got and most of my, I can't handle a very complicated situation. I mean, it's got to be pretty simple. I've got only one resource. I'm going after 7.5 million 18-wheelers. It's all in the energy bill 1835, and that's going to pass, and it's going to happen, and we are going to have an energy plan for America. Now, okay, questions?
Yes.
Are you from Oklahoma State?
Well, yes, I'm a supporter.
Okay, well, you have an orange tie on. I appreciate that, did you?
My concern is the national security and the homeland security. They're called intertwined. But the smart grid, that's something that we need to really look at our stimulus money. Our mayor came up earlier and said that we have to look at our assets that our government is spending with this stimulus money. Is there a plan for the Pickens plan as far as transmission lines from the wind farms to get this smart grid? We can go down the interstates and establish clean and green fueling station infrastructure, but I don't see that in the stimulus plan.
Okay, yes, what we have is a grid, you know, and it's very difficult to move high voltage power because it has to go from state to state, and there's not a siting authority to accomplish that. If you want to, everything I do, there's always a model. I don't do R&D because it takes 10 years for R and 10 years for D, and that puts me past 100. So that doesn't work for me. I have to go from a working model. Working model is that if you look at the natural gas pipelines built in the United States the last 10 years, it's 12,000 miles. If you look at the high voltage grid that has been added, it's been 1,000 miles. The difference is a siting authority by FERC for natural gas pipelines, and we don't have that for high voltage. I think this Congress realizes that they've got to do something about that. And once you have a national grid that I'm told, because this isn't my business at this point, is that you'll be 20% more efficient and you'll need 20% less power in the grid. We have 987,000 megawatts of power a day available to us in our grid. I'm told you can cut that by 20% with a grid that is like you're talking about. Yes, I think it's all that's going to happen. The wind's going to happen. You get in rooms of people that are kind of foolish about what they think can happen. They think you can put all wind on and cut off all coal. I guess you could do that. it would be an unusual looking profile for the whole thing. And I imagine that your power would cost you 10 times what it does today. And I have told those that are foolish about how we're going to get rid of all the coal and replace it with wind. Well, wind isn't, you know, it's intermittent. It doesn't blow all the time. I'm from West Texas. I think it does, but it doesn't. And so it's, you know, when I tell them, I said, you got to understand the person that's paying for the electric bill also is the person that votes. And if you double the power cost or triple the power cost, they're not going to vote for you. And that means more to a politician than anything you can say to them, whether somebody's going to vote for them or vote against them. And so all that's going to happen. We're going to go to our resources, which are wind, solar. We're going to have a 21st century grid, and we're going to use natural gas. And all this is going to happen pretty fast, I think. Within 10 years, our whole energy situation in America will be different. Yes?
And what's interesting is, and if you could address this, you go outside of 40, outside of Amarillo, you see in the last 5 years that wind farm up there that has just exponentially grown. Is that online? Is that functioning now?
Yeah, you can't put those turbines up unless you're going to sell the power, unless you have just plenty of money and you don't mind putting it in something that isn't going to generate any cash flow. All of that works. Yes, it does. And you're talking about out there at Adrian on 40. They got that. If you come back 60 northeast of Amarillo going to Pampa, there's one up there. Shell is a part interest at Shell Oil Company. His part interest owns a half of that one up at White Deer, Texas. But yes, and if you go down to Sweetwater, it's there's about 3,000 megawatts there. That's the largest concentration of power in the state of Texas is in that Sweetwater area. So yes, it's all going to happen, and it is happening. Another question? Yes.
For the natural gas resources you were talking about that we're recently able to exploit, a lot of them are in the American Northeast, Louisiana, like Western Pennsylvania. Now, the methods that they've developed was called hydrogen fraction. I'm familiar with this technique. Is basically pumping down.
What do you call it?
Water fracture, basically, hydrofracking.
Oh, hydrofracking. Oh, sure, sure. Okay, you want me to respond to that?
Yeah, but what I've noticed for like reading a couple EPA reports from having friends passing along to me, that benzene also leaks out from the water, and then from the actual pumping down the water and pumping it up, there's still benzene in there. Now, since I believe it was 2005, they made amendments to the Safe Drinking Water Act where they're not required to clean up that water before discharging it into waterways. Does the Pickens plan address this? Does it just encourage people to take care of their benzene water or benzene diluted water points?
We haven't addressed that specific, but let me comment about hydrofracking.
Very worrisome, sir.
The benzene, I don't know how much benzene you're getting in there, but
may I explain why it concerns me? They had a study in Western Pennsylvania for a natural gas well, and cancer rates went up by around 800%, and it was a 400% increase in, what do you call it when you lose a child, when you lose a fetus? I forget the exact term for that.
what I call what?
Spontaneous abortion? I don't know. Miscarriage, thank you, sorry.
Okay, I know what you're talking about, but okay, Pennsylvania has just gotten into fracking. That's in the Marcellus Shale. And I've talked to Governor Rendell about this in Pennsylvania and all. That can be fixed. I mean, why is Pennsylvania different than Texas and Oklahoma? It isn't. We've been fracking in Texas and Oklahoma for 50 years, and no question. And what's opened up all this gas is you drill a vertical and then you take a horizontal leg off of it, and when you do, you go in and you perforate, set a plug, frack, set a plug, frack, frack, frack. They'll make 10 fracks up across that horizontal. Now, when you talk about groundwater is at a much, it's shallow, very shallow. And we're talking about at depth 5 to 10, 12,000 feet deep. So you've got huge amount of separation between groundwater. Now you can have a leak in the surface casing, pump out, and have it go into the groundwater, and whatever the frac fluid is, if it has benzene in it, it's in the deal. But those are all, okay, how can you respond to that?
The issue is, though, they're not required to treat the water before discharging it.
Okay, let's treat it. That's fine with me, yeah.
Is it
I'm
after
for that.
the bill?
Okay. I know what I'm talking about on frack, and you're not going to shut down the fracking to get natural gas for America. Okay, okay,
Treatment before destruction.
clean up the water. Okay, all right, another question.
What do you see as the role of, you said oil, you predict oil is going to go up. What do you see the role of water, the price of water in the next kind of 10, 20 years? And then how do you see water as a kind of solution to issues such as nutrition? Price of water.
Okay, if I heard the question right, is what happens to water? Is the price of water going to go up? Yes, it's going to go up. If you look at water available to us in the Metroplex, it comes from people that were visionaries back in the 50s, built the lakes and all, and after a horrible drought, they could see what could happen to us again here. They have the lakes. The lakes are now being stretched for supply, and in 5 years, you're going to have to come up with a lot more water for the Metroplex. Now, the Metroplex uses 1,600,000 acre-feet of water a year, and I have water for sale to the Metroplex, which is 200,000 acre-feet, which is not going to solve growth for 10 years. All it is a nice incremental addition to a very good system. And so, but it's, I've had that water for sale for 10 years and haven't sold it yet, and so I don't, anyway. But the price is going to go up. There's no question it is, because where's the water going to come from? You don't have groundwater here of any, I'm talking about shallow. We call groundwater that water that's below the ground, and we call, of course, lakes or surface water. And so Dallas, Fort Worth are supplied by surface lakes is what it is. San Antonio is all groundwater from the Edwards aquifer. So, there's water different places. You have to plan for it and be sure you have it, or you're going to choke growth at some point. Yes.
Good morning. I'm Andrew Knight from Australia, down in Oklahoma. We very much believe in your sort of theory and revolution. But one question, Andrew, what pricing does natural gas have to be at in America to start displacing some of the coal generation as a fuel source?
Help me, I couldn't hear.
What kind of price does gas have to be at to displace coal?
Well,
How low does it have to get?
Natural gas is displacing coal now. Natural gas is very cheap. If you look at historically, natural gas is about 10. The ratio is 10 to 1 to oil. $80 oil is $8 natural gas. Well, that has widened dramatically, and instead of a 10 to 1, it went to a 27 to 1 this summer. And now it's tightening back up again. But if you look on BTU equivalency, oil to natural gas, it's 6 to 1. But natural gas has always been substantially cheaper than oil. And so today, when I look at natural gas, it will eventually compare to diesel. Now, what is that comparison? Natural gas, 1 MCF of natural gas equaled 7 gallons of diesel. So 7 gallons of diesel today is about $20, and 1 MCF of natural gas is $5. So you have a wide difference. What a wonderful time to switch to the cheaper fuel, which is ours. It's cleaner, and we're insane if we don't do this. So it's all going to happen, but will it make natural gas prices go up? Yes, they're going to go up. As there's more demand for it, it'll naturally go up. But I think natural gas will always sell below diesel and even oil. I don't think you'll see natural gas move above oil or diesel.
One last question, please.
Okay.
How long will it take to transition all the trucks that you're wanting to transition into natural gas?
Okay,
Are the manufacturers on board already and already developing the transition?
Yeah, okay, model. For how quick can we transition the 7.5 million trucks? I'll say, if you look at what Obama said at the nomination speech, he said, in 10 years, we will not be importing any oil from the Mideast. When he was at the 4th debate with Bob Schieffer, I talked to Schieffer, had lunch with him 2 weeks before the debate. He said, if you're going to ask a question, what would you ask? And I said, ask about our dependency on foreign oil. He did. Obama's response was exactly what he said on the nominating speech. He said, in 10 years, we will not be importing any oil from the Mideast. Can that happen? It's going to be really hard to do, but you will make such a decrease if you go with the Pickens plan that it'll look like you did it. I mean, you're going to feel good about yourself. What's going to happen? You're going to feel good about yourself. How quick can you do it? Now, know this, it's not a conversion of equipment. Is the technology in place? Yes, it is. The model is California. Long Beach, Los Angeles port area has the worst air quality. They're approaching this from an air quality issue. And it has the worst air quality of any place in California. Kind of an interesting story, I'll tell you. A guy named Freeman, Dave Freeman, was brought in there, and he's an old TVA guy, Tennessee Valley Authority, bureaucrat, but a zealot green. And I've gotten to know him very well. He's 2 years older than I am. And that mayor of Los Angeles brought him in there because he's a guy that if you give him an axe, he can do some chopping. And so he brought him in and said, here's a report. We kill 3,500 people in the Port of Los Angeles area every year because of air quality. And so he took it. Now he's got the job. Now he has a staff. And now he says, you've read this. They all said they read it. Okay, he said, in a month, come back with me for a plan for how we fix this. A month later, they came back in. The spokesman for the group said, if we cut back to year 2000 emissions in the Port of Los Angeles, we'll only kill 1,750 people. He said, are you crazy? We can go from 3,500 down to 1,750. We're not going to kill anybody. I want this fixed. I don't want to be killing 1,750 people and think I'm doing a good job. So he did. What he did, he went to natural gas. The trucks, 18-wheelers in the Port of Los Angeles, Long Beach, that area are going all to natural gas. Kenworth, Peterbilt, Volvo, they all make the trucks. But you don't convert. You don't take a diesel and upfit it to natural gas. Just when it runs out, now this second model I want to tell you about is Southern California, South Coast Air Quality Management District, AQMD, run by a guy named Barry Wallerstein, smart, tough guy with money. And he has taxing authority down there, and he had an air quality issue, and this was 7 years ago. He said, okay, who are my biggest polluters? Trash trucks. They idle, so they have an inefficient burn, and they work 24/7. So he said, okay, what's the incremental difference? $50,000. That was $50,000 7 years ago, which is narrowed to $10,000 now, and now over 50% of the trash trucks in Southern California are on natural gas. How did he do it? He just said, when you buy a new one, it has to be natural gas. We'll give you $50,000, and it went seamless. It was easy. You can do the same thing here, and when HR 1835 passes, it's got $65,000 tax credit, incremental difference, which will narrow over time, and when it does, you don't give $65,000, you give less than that. But you're moving to our fuel, and you're moving away from OPEC very, very fast. So that could happen, and I would say in 10 years' time, if they'll turn it over to me, I can get it fixed, but they're not going to do that. But I think under the plan that I've laid out here, that you will be more than halfway there in 10 years. So thank you very much.